Hi, I'm Mark Hellyer, the Academic Director at LSC, and I just wanted to introduce this short video which outlines the thinking behind the syllabus for our LSC summer courses. In the video I'll also show you why the three things in front of me are more important than learning grammar, and they are pronunciation, memory and common vocabulary, and I'll show you what's in this box later. I want to start by focusing on our students. We don't want them to see the LSC course as a 2-week experience to be forgotten as soon as they return home. We see the learner as someone who's already begun an English learning journey which will continue far into the future. Our job during the time they're with us is to give them the most useful equipment to put in their backpack for that journey. Let's look at what is actually involved in language learning, the how. I've identified 4 key elements, and to illustrate them I've borrowed Einstein's famous equation, but I've changed it to LE equals ME squared. This stands for learning English equals memory plus engagement times motivation plus exposure. Of course, here I'm focusing on English, but these are the essential ingredients for learning any language. Now let's look at each of these. Memory is at the heart of all learning, but its role in language learning is often overlooked. We actually forget 75% of what we learn after 48 hours. Now this isn't new information that I've just discovered. It was the 19th century German psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus who studied the way we forget things over time, and his research showed that the best way to combat this was spaced repetition. For example, if you cover something in class in week 1, repeat it in week 3, again in week 5 and so on, there's a good chance that the information will be remembered. In order to remember something, information has to be transferred from the short-term memory, where it will be forgotten, to the long-term memory, where it will be remembered. The way this happens is through organising information in networks known as schemas, and in this process the meaningfulness or emotional content of an item is important. When there is no motivation to remember something new, it just disappears from our short-term memory and we forget it. And we also forget things we think we've already learned when they don't have enough connections in our memory networks and when they're not used often enough. Think about how vivid some of your childhood memories from years ago are, and compare that to how quickly we forget the things we studied the night before an exam. So understanding how memory works and getting the brain working in the most efficient way is essential for effective language learning. Engagement means that lessons need to be interesting and fun. And this ties in again with memory. The more interesting and fun a lesson is, the more our students will remember. It's that simple. Motivation is a crucial factor, and ultimately it must come from the students. As teachers we can help and guide students, but we can't learn the language for them. An English course in the UK can help a great deal with motivation, as students experience the culture and begin to see the language as a means of communication, rather than just as a boring school subject. That brings us to exposure, and here's the real benefit of a visit to the UK. You can't learn a language without being exposed to it, and on an LSC English course the students are interacting with native speakers in class, when they do sports, drama, karaoke and all the other activities, and English is all around them when they're going on excursions or just going shopping. So that's the how of language learning. Now we need to focus on the what where English is concerned. What are the biggest problems for foreign learners? One of these is undoubtedly English pronunciation, because our spelling is often inconsistent and we have more sounds than we have letters, so we have to combine letters to make extra sounds. Jennifer Jenkins, Professor of English and the author of this book on English phonology, underlines the importance of good pronunciation. She says 70% of all communication breakdown between learners is due to pronunciation problems. Another area of difficulty is the very large vocabulary of English. An educated native speaker has a vocabulary of about 20,000 words, which is way too many to learn, so students have to focus on the most useful words and develop strategies for more effective learning. Our grammar system, on the other hand, is actually quite simple compared to that of other languages. Our nouns don't have gender and don't change except in the plural, and our verbs are equally simple. Apart from a few exceptions, we don't change verb endings with each person and just add ed for past forms. And perhaps most importantly, using bad grammar does not generally prevent understanding, because the context usually provides enough clues to make understanding possible. The role of grammar means there are effectively two kinds of English for a foreign learner. English for passing exams, and English for communicating. The first demands a great deal of grammatical accuracy because written exams are based on the idea of right and wrong, so in exams language issues become very black and white. Communication, however, is much more of a grey area. It demands very little grammatical accuracy as long as the right message is conveyed, so a large vocabulary and good pronunciation are much more useful for that. I mentioned earlier that a foreign learner cannot learn the same amount of words and the thousands of different ways they combine that a native speaker knows. However, with a vocabulary of between 2,000 and 3,000 words, a learner can operate quite comfortably in the language, providing he or she has learnt the right words and can pronounce them correctly. When I say the right words, I mean the most common, that is, the most useful. And thanks to extensive computer analysis, we now know which those words are. They're indicated in most good learner dictionaries, for example, the Oxford 3000. So one of the essentials of more effective learning is to target the most useful words. And with this in mind, I've created a teaching and learning resource called QuizWord, which focuses on 2,000 of the most common words in English. QuizWord is a set of 200 cards, each containing 6 questions in different categories. The questions can be used over and over again, that all-important spaced repetition, with elementary students and above. And many different game formats are possible, so it's an ideal resource for creating engaging lessons focused on common vocabulary. All of our teachers are given a set of these cards and are encouraged to use them frequently in class. I'll leave you now with a reminder of the key elements that your students get on an LSC course. Plenty of exposure to native speaker English, both in and out of the classroom. Daily pronunciation practice. Strategies for more effective learning. The most useful vocabulary through using QuizWord. And engagement through interesting topics and our classroom approach. Thanks for listening, and I hope to see you on an LSC course very soon.